guys, so let's talk about this week's episode of Defiance. I was really kind of interested to find out what this show was going to be like week to week after watching the pilot. I did like the pilot. I wasn't over the moon about the pilot, but I'm all about giving a show a chance, you know, like it takes me a while to give up on a show, you know, like before I decide, okay, no, this is not for me. I'm gonna give it a good 5-6 episodes before I decide that. With that in mind, let's talk about last night's episode of Defiance. So the bulk of this episode is about this cast-a-thon named Ela. And we saw him in the pilot episode, right, during the big battle, and at one point he gets really scared and he basically deserts. He runs away. But Detectar sees him do that and then decides, okay, you ran away, that means you need to face kind of cast-a-thon judgment. And so they have this ceremony that they do where they like kind of string him up and they have these chains on his arms, and one by one each of the cast-a-thons come by and they drop rocks into this bucket and basically add weight to the chains that are on his arms. And it's really kind of torturous. And this goes on for days, you know? And Nolan and Arissa kind of come at one point to try to stop it, but the mayor won't let them, and of course Detectar is not having any of that. And Amanda, the mayor, right, she tries to explain to Nolan about kind of the sensitivity they need to have towards these 8 races that they've got living in Defiance, all who have their own traditions and different things. But you get that she wants to stop this, but at the same time, you know, she's trying to be sensitive to the fact that this is their tradition and this is kind of what they do. Now, the ex-mayor, Nikki, shows up in town with her kind of like sidekick, Birch, and of course they're up to no good. This Birch guy goes to the doctor's office and injects Ben, the traitor from the last episode, with something that basically wakes him up. So Birch kind of sends him back off into the mines to continue searching for this thing that they want called the Kaziri. So Ben heads off to go into the mines. Rafe gets wind of this, and before you know it, we see Rafe and Nolan and some of the other miners going into the mine after him. Nolan is really there to make sure that Rafe doesn't kill Ben, because of course Ben killed his son Luke in the pilot episode. Probably my favorite part of the episode was some of the visuals we saw as they went into the mine. It turns out that some of old St. Louis is still buried underneath Defiance. And so when they go down into the mines, it was just really cool and awesome, some of the special effects, as we saw kind of like this old kind of broken down city. Eventually they find Ben and they stop him from trying to blow up like this nuclear plant that's down there, which would have been bad for everyone. And there's this whole struggle with Rafe and, oh, I want to kill him because he killed my son, blah, blah, blah. And I think, okay, let's talk about one of the people that I don't like in this show. It's him. He drives me batty. I don't know why. His whole family, really. I think it's like, I feel like I have no connection with them, and because of that, I don't really care what happens to them. And when I see them on the screen, I'm just kind of annoyed. He seems really kind of like stereotypical to me. I talked about that a little bit in the pilot, about there being parts of this story that really kind of seemed cliche to me, and he's one of those. Most of the time, it feels like his character is reacting in a cliche way. You killed my son, I must avenge him, you know? And it was like, there was no real emotion behind that. It was just kind of like, that's what would happen if you killed a father's son, he would come after you type of thing. And so, I don't know, they got to do something about that, because I don't really feel much for him. There's still the storyline, of course, with his daughter and the whole Romeo and Juliet thing between her and Detectar's son. And again, I'm not really feeling that as much as well. So, I mean, those parts of the story are, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what it is about this show that I just am not getting drawn into, really. You know, like, I don't want to compare it to other shows, but like, when I think about how I felt when I watched Battlestar Galactica originally, it was like, you got this story that, yes, it's a sci-fi story, but it's also a real human story. And I feel like the problem with this show is it's a sci-fi show, but I'm not really sensing the human side much of it yet. Or like, when they do try to kind of delve into the human side of things, it's in a very cliche way, and I don't really love that. And not always, I will say that, because like, I'm interested in Nolan's character, I'm interested in Arissa's character, and Tommy, you know, like there are some aspects of it that I think have great potential, but like this whole storyline, the Mccawleys and the Tars and their whole thing, like I don't care about it. Okay, so I'm gonna stop ranting now and rant. Back to kind of what happened. Eventually, to like in town, while Nolan is gone, Arissa, you know, before he leaves, he tells her, leave the whole like Ela and cast-a-thon thing alone, but of course Arissa doesn't. And we get from her reaction, like the reaction she has when she's standing out there kind of watching this man being tortured, we get that she obviously has had some kind of experience with that in her past, because she doesn't react well to it and eventually finally cuts him down, and there's this kind of big showdown where Detectar shows up, and the mayor finally comes and tries to like calm the situation, and he tries to act like Detectar. He tries to act like, okay, you know, like, let's take a step back and we'll reevaluate and blah, blah, blah. But by the end of the episode, he basically takes this man out and slices his throat and like throws his dead body in front of the police station. So we get that this man is pretty ruthless. His wife, Stama, too, you guys, like, she is like manipulation 101, right? I mean, like, she does that with her husband, with her family, and with really everyone. Something else that happens at the end of the episode is we see Rafe, Mccawley go back home after kind of the whole Ben thing. And also, you know, like, before Ben dies, he tells Rafe, like, your son hated you. And so he goes back into his son's room and he's going through his stuff, and he finds this big stash of money, because that was something Ben told him, like, your son was trying to leave because he hates you so much. So he finds this money, but he also finds this artifact, which I think is the Kaziri, is this thing, you know, that the ex-mayor Nikki and, you know, her sidekick have been looking for, and that Ben was in the mines looking for. So I guess we'll kind of find out what that is and why they're looking for it. So yeah, you guys, like I said, this was an okay episode. Like, I gave the pilot episode like a 7 out of 10. This episode would get more like a 5, maybe a 5.5 out of 10. I mean, it just was, yeah, I don't know. But I will keep watching, and I guess we'll see what's going to happen. I'm hoping that this show, like, gets its feet and really kind of starts to get better. I am in it to win it, so fingers crossed that eventually it gets better. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. If you want to check out my review of the pilot episode of Defiance, you can go ahead and click on the video link here. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.